What's up guys, Raziel here, and I've got a video for you. What I would do to make World of Warcraft great again. So, no more waffling, let's just get into it.
I am Raziel.
What's up guys, Raziel here, and this is going to be a long one. So prepare yourselves, this is more to be listened to than to be watched, but as always I will put eye candy on the screen. I did a similar video for Final Fantasy XIV of what I would change, what I think doesn't work. Well, I think it's high time I did the same thing for World of Warcraft as I play that game as well. In fact, it's kind of the MMO I'm maining right now, mainly because of the endgame content that I enjoy. Again, I've said this many times, whatever MMO you're going to like the most is usually going to be the one that offers you the thing you like to do the most. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. I'm here to talk about how to make World of Warcraft better. Not just to bitch and moan and complain about it, because I've made plenty of videos like that and a lot of other YouTube channels have done the same. What I want to do is tell you what I think is wrong and then my proposed fixes to make World of Warcraft great again. And the chances Blizzard will listen to any of this feedback are next to nothing. I mean, they are very, very full of themselves, in my opinion, in terms of just not really taking feedback. And anyway, that's beside the point. Let's just get into it. The first system I want to tackle are talents. So the talent system has seen a huge change since its early days in 2004 to what we have right now in World of Warcraft 9.0. As of this video, 9.1 is a week away. So talents are something that have been changed a lot throughout the years, and I understand why they got rid of the original point system with cookie cutter and all that stuff kind of playing, coming into play, the illusion of choice. But to be honest, the current talent system is no better. It falls under the same problems of cookie cutter and illusion of choice. Now, I don't recommend completely scrapping the system. The idea that the talents are picked and chosen throughout the list, that you unlock at certain levels as you level up, is completely fine. Where the issue falls into place is that there are certain talents that have to be taken. What Blizzard needs to do is, if they have the data, I have the data. I can go on World of Warcraft logs and show you this right in front of your face. In fact, I will. It's on screen now. But if a talent is taken in 80% or more of all the content and all situations in the game, it should no longer be a talent. It should be a baseline ability. Perfect example of this, I said in my Blood Decay Balance video last week. Will of the Necropolis is one such talent, and I think almost every class and spec has these in there. If it's used 80% or more of the time in all content, it's something that kind of needs to be there in order for the class to function properly, in which case this talent should be baseline. Blizzard should go through, find these, turn those into baseline for the character, for the class, for the spec, and then that opens room to add new talents and make the talents actually unique and usable. And this is something everybody's been saying for a long time. But what I mean by that is talent should provide flavor and gameplay changes and feel more so than raw throughput. Because as long as everything's raw throughput, the new talents, the ones that were, that get put in the game, the thing that provides the most mathematical benefit in 80% or more content will once again happen. And then those abilities can be baseline. Eventually everything becomes baseline. That's not what we want. What we need is every row needs to be, utility based or damage based. You should never have a utility spell in a row competing with a damage one in the row, because why? 9 times out of 10 the damage one is going to be picked. Have an entire row that's damage based, have an entire row that's defense based, have an entire row that's utility based, and make the talents competitive with each other. So depending on different situations, for example, looking at the Blood Death Knight talent tree, which by the way, I'm going to use Death Knight a lot in an example for talents and things, just simply because it's what I main. And they're the fucking best. Not mathematically speaking, they're definitely not flavor of the month, but it's just what I like. So in this example here, we can, look at if there's a high magic damage fight, you take the one that absorbs more magic damage. If it's a fast-hitting boss, you would take, Mark of Blood and things like that. So you can adapt and go through as you move along and change your build depending on the content you're doing. I know this is partially there with Mythic Plus and raiding and then PvP, all kind of using a different configuration, but for the most part, many of the same talents are consistently taken across all content, and if that's the case, it should just be baseline. Talent should provide flavor and should provide, a slight change of gameplay. And something that has been brought up a lot, and this, trust me, this has to do with talents, is the fact that borrowed power is a broken ass system. I mean, even Blizzard has said in some recent interviews that this expansion that we're currently in, is this is going to be the end of the borrowed power dynamic. They said they're not going to do this anymore, and I hope they're lying. I mean, telling the truth, excuse me, but I'll believe it when I see it. I hear Blizzard and what they say, and I instantly, the word lie comes into my head. Anyway, with borrowed power, it kind of ruins things because it's going to go away and it feels empty and meaningless. I mean, let's be real. The borrowed power of the Covenant systems and the, conduits and all that shit that's currently going on in the game can be pinned as the primary reason for all the points of imbalance in the game, all the bullshit, the one-shot things happening in PvP, the skewed damage numbers in PvE, the comp, the party comp meta in Mythic Plus is all linked right now to the Covenant system. Borrowed power needs to go away and never come the fuck back because it just ruins the game. It ruins the game in every possible way. It's not even the illusion of choice anymore. It's straight up, you have to do this or your class is ineffective. So how can we fix this moving forward? Because leveling is what I want to talk about next, which will help us determine how to go forward. However, what I would do is add something very similar to the glyph system that used to be in the game, or you can look at the glyph system in Diablo 3. I think what we should do, what there should be, is there should always be a level cap of 60, and it should never increase. So let's go ahead and talk about leveling and see how it would then tie into the idea I have for the talent trees, on top of just balancing them, but making power gain continue after level cap via your talents and not through gear. So, with the leveling system that we have currently in the game, leveling in most MMOs is completely meaningless at this point. It's a means to an end, and it's just something you have to do. It's a chore, essentially. When in old MMOs and in the past in World of Warcraft's history, it was kind of the journey itself and the vast majority of the game. I don't think that's ever coming back, and it's delusions of grandeur to think that that'll ever be brought back or into a game that already exists. Will it come back in a future game that's not released yet? Maybe. But that's what we're discussing here. So leveling in World of Warcraft, we've seen now where they've had to do the first level squish. We went from character level 120 all the way down to 60 again, which was the original level cap in World of Warcraft vanilla. And we've seen, every expansion after vanilla, they added 10 more levels, a couple expansions, they added 5 levels, but that's how we got up to 120, forcing them eventually to go back down to level 60 and do a number squish. Number squishing and level squishing and item level squishing is definitely something that is just, part of being a theme park MMO. You can't get rid of it, especially as the MMO ages, but we can definitely slow it the fuck down. So my proposal here would be to add hero levels, much in the way that they did in Dark Age of Camelot's expansion. If you're not familiar with it, you can look it up yourself. I won't go into too much detail. So what I am proposing is, obviously you have all your talents on the talent rows at level 60. What I would then add is a possible glyph or point system that's all hero levels. So when you gain a hero level through experience, your actual base level of 60 doesn't go up to 61. You just unlock a socket or something in the talent tree. Now what these sockets would do is you can get glyphs from, and Blizzard has a huge pool to pull from. Things that were in abilities and traits that were in Azerite armor, abilities and traits that were on some, not all, because some of them are overpowered, legendaries, and of course, the things that we see in the conduit tree. I think that the things you plug into this new socket can only affect talents in that row and not baseline abilities. It gives a lot more creativity to Blizzard and to figure out new and interesting ways to make things happen. So in that case, it would incentivize you to change these points up just as much it would change your talent system up, your talent choices up, excuse me, depending on the fight or the content that you're doing. And you could even bring crafting into this, a little bit, which we're going to get into crafting later. We're still on talents and leveling right now. So what I would do is you find these and you're still limited per number. So let's say every talent tree row would have 3 sockets, one for each talent essentially, that you could put points into or put a glyph or, conduit type item into. But you can only do so many. Let's say that, the next expansion, there's 5 hero levels, which gives you a total of 5 points or, glyphs or whatever to spend. In that case, you may have, because there's, X amount of talent rows, there's going to be a lot more empty sockets than there are things to put into it, points to spend. So you have to choose wisely. They can be switched, they can be changed around, but you can't have them all, is the point. You can't have them all and all activated at the same time. And I think it would make the talent system much more interesting if these glyphs or hero levels only affected talents themselves, make, the talent you choose somewhat stronger, as opposed to editing or messing with any kind of baseline abilities your class has. I think those should be left alone to scale with gear. So, speaking of stats and gear, this is the next thing that I want to talk about, of how I would fix stats and gear in World of Warcraft. Now, gear in World of Warcraft has seen a lot of changes over the years. You look at vanilla World of Warcraft with the awful stat alignment, and it continually got better and more complex. But Blizzard has attempted in the past few expansions to improve or simplify the gearing system while simultaneously adding all these borrowed power systems in that are overly complex and borderline, retarded, to the point that it's kind of like reaching around your elbow to get to your ass. And it's completely stupid. Gear these days, stat-wise, is completely fucking boring. Appearance-wise, in some ways, is completely fucking boring. And it's very, very easy to fix. Blizzard can fix this so easily, and I'll show you what I would do. First and foremost, I would remove versatility from the game. Versatility is the most boring stat ever put into an MMORPG. A baseline stat that just gives an increase to how much damage you do and a decrease to how much damage you take. That's boring. It's stupid. Versatility needs to get removed from the game. Absolutely, completely. Especially since right now it's even playing into, even after they did these stupid item level changes in 9.1 to the PvP gear, because versatility is BIS for tanks, most tanks best in slot still going to be PvP gear regardless. They didn't fix that issue. So versatility needs to be removed from the game. Secondly, we have to accept and understand that mastery right now is currently the most interesting stat in the game, because what your mastery does affects your spec, each spec, not just class, each spec in the game differently. Blizzard should be using this to their advantage, because mastery should be, most classes should be the stat that people are going after, because it has a different effect, and it gives Blizzard more, freedom to tweak with what mastery does for each class. And it's okay if it's some specs mastery is not the best stat, but right now it's definitely the most interesting and has the most potential to use. Now, so let's say we've removed versatility from gear. What's next? Well, we need to bring back spell power, attack power, defense, and resilience or PvP power, a PvP specific stat. It's what the PvP stat's called is irrelevant. But if gear dropped with spell power for, healers and casters, attack power for melee and like hunters ranged, and defense, which people go, what's defense rating, since the defense skill is no longer in the game? I would say the defense rating on gear should be a small increased chance to parry and dodge. That's what defense essentially should do. Maybe a slight boost in how much, a bonus to how much armor you get from your armor. Things like that. So gear, players would naturally be drawn, if they're tanks, to gear with defense on it, while casters are naturally drawn to spell power gear. So you would get a piece of gear and it would have, your two primary stats, stamina always being one and the other one either being strength, agility, or intellect. That can stay the same. But then what I would also, and then you still have crit, haste, and mastery. So let's say you, as a tank, I would get a piece of gear that has strength, stamina, and defense on it. So you'll see how this plays into the other areas I'm going to be talking about later in the video, such as Mythic Plus and stuff like that, because it's all going to come together and make sense, you'll see. Now, the PvP stat would be, let's just say it's called PvP power. What PvP power does is it does the same thing attack power does, the same thing that spell power does, and depending on, what class is wielding the item, and it also decreases damage taken. But it only activates when you're in PvP content. Bam. Automatically, PvP gear becomes fucking useless for PvE, and PvE gear becomes a liability in a sense in PvP, because even if you're super powerful with PvE gear, you go in there and you may be able to do a lot of damage, but you're going to get killed really quick because you don't have any resilience or the PvP power stat. People always complain, well, what if I do both content? They make 2 fucking sets. Stop being lazy. I love PvP and I love PvE. I know a lot of players that love PvE and won't touch PvP at a 10-foot pole. I know a lot of PvP players love PvP and will never set foot in a raid. That's completely fine to have different groups and factions of people. Not every single player needs to be involved in every single aspect of the game by force, because right now that's the way it is. A lot of people to gear up are forced to do PvP right now. And, there's certain pieces that, because the versatility also drops in raids, that people go for the 226, Mythic Plus versatility item that's from PvE, even though they hate the PvE content to get it. It's completely fine to separate PvP and PvE gear, and I think that's the way it should be. And it's a good thing, and I will give credit where credit is due, that now PvP vendors are back in the game, which is fantastic. But come on, versatility needs to be removed, and actual stats for classes need to be brought back. Just like in Burning Crusade, we're seeing now in Burning Crusade Classic with spell power bonuses, bonus to damage spells and effects, attack power. I'm completely okay with hit rating and expertise rating being gone. I don't think those are necessary. But attack power, defense, spell power, and a PvP specific stat need to be out to separate the gear. The next thing, as far as gear is concerned, is tier sets need to be brought back. And to fix their problem that Blizzard stated was the issue, is being, you have dead slots the entire expansion or raid tier because you have to get the tier set. This is a very easy fix. All you need to do is bring back 8-piece sets, but only 3 set bonuses, right? So if you have a tier set that's 8 pieces, all 8 pieces, right, could drop. But the highest set bonus you can get is wearing 3 pieces. That automatically fixes the problem, because let's say you have the helmet, chest, and shoulders, and then later on you also pick up the gloves, right? But then later on in the raid, you finally get those shoulders that are better itemized than the tier pieces. Well, you can put on those shoulders and then just throw on the gloves you got to keep your 3-piece set. That is what needs to happen. A 2-piece bonus and a 3-piece bonus, and no bonuses higher than that. Essentially, tier sets need to come back because they're what added flavor, and they kind of were the biggest difference, the biggest reason to raid outside and get gear outside of just doing Mythic Plus and outside of just doing PvP. There needs to be a separation, and it's okay that if you want gear pieces, gear set bonuses, you have to raid. I mean, shit, LFR is in the game and it's the biggest piece of shit ever, but Blizzard is never going to get rid of it. So if you really want tier pieces, you can just do LFR if you don't want to actually do a real raid. I mean, come on, guys. We've got to bring back tier sets, and we've got to stop bitching about how unfair it is you have to raid to get tier sets. Yeah, we have to PvP to get PvP gear, so fuck off. All right. Got a little heated there. Next thing I would do is I would bring back Reforging. I don't understand why Reforging was removed from the game. It's whatever reason Blizzard gave was dog shit, and it needs to come back. Why? Because it makes gear more valuable. It makes you feel less like shit, especially with personal loot being the primary loot in the game now, where you get a piece of gear and it's completely fucking useless to you. While with Reforging, you could get it and you're like, oh, great. It may not be the best for me, but I can take a stat that I don't need and cut it in half and get half of a stat that I do need for now, right? That's a good thing. In fact, we could even take it a step further and make Reforging 2.0, where let's say you have a piece that's haste crit on your gear, but you want mastery and not haste. In the old Reforging system, it would take, let's say your haste rating was 100 on this piece of gear, it would turn it into 50 and then also give you 50 mastery, the stat of your choice. What I would do is it still gives you half, so 50 mastery, but it completely removes the haste. So haste doesn't go to 50 and then you get 50 mastery. It just gives you 50 mastery and haste goes off the piece of gear. That way you won't get, arbitrary stacking of a bunch of stats and reach into that, power creep as quickly. But Reforging needs to come back. It was a good option. Now, speaking of items, there's another big thing we need to address, and this is something we never really had to address, and it wasn't a problem until Legion, and now it's a huge problem and a huge cock in the ass. So we're going to go ahead and talk about Legendaries. So, Legendaries. I'm going to make this really simple. Legendaries are borrowed power if I've ever seen it. And it's gotten to the point where Legendaries aren't legendary at all. They're items you absolutely have to have in order for your class to function and be competitive. That's stupid. Legendaries need to go back to how they were in Vanilla, Burning Crusade, and Wrath of the Lich King. The Legendaries, there should only be at most 2 to 3 Legendaries per expansion for specific, weapon types, maybe even an armor type. And they need to be crafted. Crafted is best. I'm okay, with the rare, super rare, like legendary drop, such as the bow we're going to be getting in 9.1 from Sylvanas, the Warglaives of Azzinoth, things like that. I'm completely okay with that, but it needs to be few and far in between. Most legendaries should be like Sulfurous or Thunder Fury, and they need to be crafted and be they should be powerful, but they shouldn't be necessary for your class to function effectively, and they should add flavor. What I mean is a legendary shouldn't do what legendaries do now, which completely change how certain baseline abilities function. What they should do is interesting things like they used to do, such as, Thunder Fury doing a wind proc that lowered the target's defense, or the bow from Kill Jaden that this is back when hunters had to actually carry around ammo. You wouldn't need ammo anymore because it just generated its own arrows. Cool shit like that is what makes legendaries fun and unique. It's okay for them to make a class, slightly OP, but it's only going to happen to one class, and it shouldn't break the game, because none of those old legendaries really broke the game in terms of what they're capable of. Yeah, if you went up against a guy with Sulfurous, back in Vanilla, in Alterac Valley, yeah, it was intimidating, but he was still beatable. And he grinded his ass off to get it. Legendary should involve all the professions to be able to create, so you rely on your guild and your friends, and even in some cases the auction house to get the things you need that were crafted to help make this long quest chain to make a legendary. That's how it should be, because the thing is items that are interesting are a lot more fun than just being overly powerful and completely changing your class to be OP doesn't necessarily mean fun. Fun is something unique, flavorful, and Blizzard actually kind of has figured that out. If you see in 9.1, some of the weapons and the procs on the weapons that are dropping in the new raid are awesome, like the two-handed sword that devours other weapons to get a proc. That's fucking awesome. That's the kind of shit we need. And none of this borrowed power crap and forced legendaries for your class to even function. Now, to going back, creating professions, let's talk about that next. What needs to be fixed in World of Warcraft in the profession category? So, every single profession in World of Warcraft used to bring a lot of value, and it no longer does. It's professions, let's be real, professions in World of Warcraft have been absolute dog shit for a long time. I mean, in this expansion, they've been a little better for some, but it's still overall pretty piss poor. And all they have to do is go back to what they had. Each major profession needs to bring something that the rest of the community that doesn't have that profession desires. Professions all need to have a max level crafting patterns that isn't just armor or gear or weapons to contribute to not only the building of that particular expansion's legendary items that get put in the game, but to just sustainability as a whole. So as people gear up, they still need, your profession to maximize their gear. So for example, blacksmiths should have the ability to add sockets. Alchemy is already really relevant. That doesn't need much of a change, with flasks and potions. Cooking is still great with feasts and food buffs. Enchanting practically speaks for itself. Everyone needs the enchantments on their gear. Engineering has Jeeves and rocket boots. Inscription needs a lot of love, just like blacksmithing does right now, for crafting, missives for the other crafting classes. And also if we add that new talent slash kind of glyph system, make maybe crafting some of the glyphs that you need would be fantastic for your hero levels. Leatherworking can, provide armor kits like they do now. And tailoring, of course, absolutely, we should bring back like the spell thread that they had in Burning Crusade, where you could put spell thread into pants and it would give you bonus attack power or bonus spell or crit or whatever. I don't know why Blizzard changed this way. I mean, it's cool that some crafting professions use mounts and give entry level gear, but overall, a lot of the crafting right now leaves a lot to be desired, and we need to have avenues and professions that tie into the legendaries that come into the expansion, where you need every crafter's help to make them, and also they always provide something that everybody else who doesn't have that profession needs. Whenever they gear up and new content and get new gear, they need to add sockets to gear. They need to add kits, thread, enchants, and all that kind of shit. Whew. Well, that was a big one. But next, I want to talk about raiding. What needs to change in raiding? And I'll be 100% honest, not a whole lot. So raiding is the crown jewel of World of Warcraft. It always has been. It's why I play that game right now over Final Fantasy XIV. I just enjoy the raiding in WoW so much more. A lot of the boss fights are fantastic. Whether the lore is good or not, storytelling is usually pretty bad. That's irrelevant. The content is really fun to do. Now, the only real changes I would make to raiding, because let's be honest, throughout World of Warcraft's entire history, raiding has almost never been in a bad state. I mean, LFR is its own thing. We won't talk about that. But the one change, a couple of changes I would make. First and foremost, if you're in a guild group and you have enough people in the guild group to get the guild achievements, so I think it's like 75-80% of your raid is in your guild, you get achievements for beating things. It might only be 60%, I don't know. But when that happens, it should give the raid leader the option to do Master Loot. This is where Master Loot should come back. And you know what? If the 1%, the top tier raiders are going to abuse that system, just fucking let them. Who cares? Who gives a shit? 99.6% of WoW's player base is not interested in World First raiding outside of maybe watching it a little bit. They have no interest in participating in it, and that's okay. If there's the top 1% that want to grind that the hardest core by exploiting some of the things Master Loot enables you to do, that's fine. Who gives a shit? Now, my next point. Might be super controversial and get me a lot of hate from Mythic Raiders. And I used to be a Mythic Raider, but this is just my opinion. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. Rage away in the comments. I don't give a fuck. But I think personally that the Mythic raiding difficulty needs to go away. Instead, what I would do is bring back the hard mode boss situation. So at least I think in every raid tier, at least half of the bosses in the raid tier should have a hard mode that you can unlock during combat, which then makes it as hard as Mythic difficulty is right now to beat that boss on hard mode. And the hard mode boss, it's activating a fight, much like the way it was in Ulduar. I think that's way better. I think the raid mode should just be normal and heroic. And then in heroic mode, there's hard modes you can unlock. But it would still provide a hard challenge for players that are, bleeding edge. And of course, the items that drop if you activate hard mode are definitely going to be higher item level. But what that'll do is, because not every single piece of gear you can equip can be that high of an item level, it will slow down inflation of item level on gear, which is then going to mean they're not going to have to do number squish it as quickly and not inflate the item level and then have to squish it back down every 2 expansions. If only half the bosses drop loot. If hard mode is beaten, that is Mythic quality. I would also bring back the Valor and Badge Point vendors that were in Wrath of the Lich King and partially in Burning Crusade that has gear for, I think there should be a token for normal and a token for heroic, and it drops that item level gear. You can buy certain items, but the items that are for sale are not items that actually drop in the raid. They're different items, so it gives the potential for some more best in slot, and it gives good protection for bad RNG. I'm completely okay, with the old token system where you could get a second roll on a boss. I would like to see that come back. You know, if even if you're using Master Loot, try to roll to get another piece of gear. But it provides people with bad RNG a way to gear up quickly, and also you can get these same things from Mythic Plus, the same badge currency to help you get some gear to get your foot in the door. And maybe only offer one piece of tier gear from this vendor. You know, maybe like the shoulders, the helmet, or something. Like you can get one piece of tier gear, maybe the ring even, so that you can, you know, get a leg up on getting your 3-piece tier set. But overall rating is great. By the way, the change I mentioned was taking up mythic difficulty. It's just my personal opinion. I think hard mode was much better and much cooler to be able to activate in the middle of a fight. But, you know, to each their own. That's just what I would do. All right, moving on. I just mentioned Mythic Plus, so let's go ahead and talk about what I would do about Mythic Plus. So I'm going to give Blizzard props where props are due. Mythic Plus is one of the best things they ever added in the game. It finally made dungeons relevant. I've been screaming forever how I wish Square Enix would do something similar in 14 with their small man content to make it difficult and more rewarding, but I digress. This is not about 14, this is about WoW. So Mythic Plus is good overall, but there's a couple things that need dire changes, and I think Mythic Plus could use an overhaul in a sense. And here's what I would do about Mythic Plus. First of all, we need to get rid of the fucking kiting game. If a player plays tank, he plays to tank, not to get some snap aggro and then just run like a little pussy around the dungeon while his group, you know, CCs and cleaves behind him and slows the enemies and then just mob them all up and just, you know, hope to God the tank actually doesn't take a hit. That needs to go away. And there's a couple options to fix this. And I'm going to give you 3. And I think the third is the best. So I'm going to go with the shittiest idea, which is also happens to be the easiest and the least work for Blizzard, to the, I think, the best idea, which is the most work for Blizzard. But let's hear me out, and again, at the end of the video, you can give your thoughts below. The easiest way to fix Mythic Plus would be to simply make it so that mobs in Mythic Plus, regardless of what keystone level you're on, if they're hitting a target that's spec'd as a tank, that is the current tank, doesn't do any more damage than it does on Mythic 0. And I'm just talking about straight melee hits, physical attacks. I'm completely okay with mobs having abilities that in Mythic level 0 would never one-shot anybody, even a low geared DPS, being capable of one-shotting or two-shotting a tank or anybody in the dungeon that gets hit by it, you know, if it's not properly interrupted or CC'd or something, in a plus 15. I'm completely okay with some things being able to one-shot once you get higher up. But basic melee attacks, this is option 1, never go up. They feel the same on it against a tank. I mean, they'll really fuck up a DPS, but they'll hit the tank the same on a plus 15 as if he was doing like a plus 3 or 4. We need so pretty much a hard cap on how much just enemy melee swings can do against a tank. That's the easiest fixed and the most lazy. The second option is almost as lazy and easy, but would be, let's say you're doing a plus 15, tank pulls in a pack of 7 mobs. The mobs, when they first start hitting the tank, are doing Mythic level 0 physical hits, right? But as the longer that trash pack stays in combat, you know, every 3 or 4 seconds they get a stack. They're hitting harder and harder and harder and harder. So eventually the tank does have to run away if his DPS is trash and not killing priority targets and just not killing effectively. That's option 2. Now, option 3 is my personal favorite, and I really thought long and hard about this. But what I would do is completely revamp the Mythic Keystone system. And this is how I would do it. And this will also tie into the gear and stat changes I talked about earlier. Keys no longer drop with an innate key level. So you still get a Mythic Plus key, but it's just a key for the dungeon, you know, labels the dungeon like Sanguine Depths, but it doesn't have a number next to it. How you get the difficulty of the key and the number, right, is you put the key in the keystone, and then there's all these options and sockets that pop up. This will also eliminate the weekly rotation of the different affixes every week. Instead, the only affix that's hard stamped and it only activates if the key hits level 10 or higher is the seasonal effect. So last tier it was Prideful, and this one, you know, is the new one where you get the Torghast abilities or whatever. But that only turns on when you hit level 10. How you increase the key's level is by adding, you know, the modifiers. So increasing, there's a little, you know, a bar where you increase enemy health, a bar that you increase how much enemy damage, how much damage they do. You know, the scaling of that. Then you can add in things like, you know, Sanguine, and all the other affixes. You can add those in, and depending on how hard that affix is to deal with, determines how many points you get. Because remember, with this 9.1, Blizzard's added in the point system for Mythic Plus, which I think is great. But it'll still enable you to get Keystone Master, because you're like, oh, we need to get, you know, 800 points. It's just, and I'm just throwing numbers out. 800 points from this run, guys. Okay, let's add in Sanguine. Let's add in, you know, mob health up by 50%, mob damage up by 20%. Actually, you know what? Our tank isn't that geared. We'll do mob by 10%. But each negative modifier you add that makes the dungeon harder increases how much points you'll get at the end if you time the key. And then what I would also do is there's bonuses you can throw in, things that help you, right? That you can throw into some of these modifiers. Now, when you add things that help you, it lowers your points. So you kind of got to do that balancing act, you know, where it's like, oh, we need 800 points at this run. So you put in a bunch of hard things, scale up the enemy's damage, scale up the enemy's health. And then it says, if you time this, you will get 900 points. You're like, oh, that's 100 more. But they're like, yeah, this might be a bit tough. Someone goes, okay, well, we only need 800 for this run. So let's throw in a positive effect, you know? Like, let's say the effect is sometimes your healer's heals, I'm just throwing something in there, your healer's heals have a chance to hit twice or something like that, which lowers it by if you beat the dungeon by 100. That way it adds more fun into the game. It adds more ways to adapt, you know, to just ultimately make things more interesting. And you can still make keys as hard as you want them, and those high achievers now that are doing, you know, 20 plus 21, 22, 23 keys and timing them can do that without just the bad luck at the draw, you know, of, oh wow, this, because how many people have gone to get Keystone Master or want to do Mythic Plus, and they're like, this week fucking sucks, like for tanks, or this week fucking sucks for melee, or this week fucking sucks, you know, for whatever reason, and people just aren't doing Mythic Plus that week. That happens all the time. This would completely solve that problem, because people every week would have control of what they go up against, and it would make it easier for Blizzard to go, wow, no one ever puts this one modifier in, or always puts this modifier in, and then they can balance certain modifiers and how much points they're worth accordingly. But this gives a lot more control over to the players of what their experience is. And let's be honest, pretty much everything I've mentioned here is Mythic Plus. The rating changes, profession changes, legendaries, completely removing barred power systems, and the talent systems, the talent changes I mentioned, stats on gear, the leveling. If this was done, it would be so much more fun, first off, and interesting to play the game, but it would be so much fucking easier for Blizzard to balance. So much easier, because they wouldn't have to be balancing Covenant class combinations, Covenant spec combinations, legendary gear, and then eventually they add another system where you can wear 2 legendaries and all this bullshit. They wouldn't have to balance that. All they would have to balance are affixes on Mythic Plus, and how many points they're worth. And again, when I talked about earlier with Mythic Plus, if we have defense and stuff, let's say your tank one week in Mythic Plus, you know, he can only take a plus 20% damage done by, you know, the NPC's modifier, but then he gears up, gets a bunch of defensive rating on a bunch of gear from a raid or other Mythic Pluses, and then all of a sudden he's like, yeah, dude, I can take a lot more hits now, knock it up to 30%, 40%. We can get higher points. See, all this is so much easier to balance. All they would need to balance are the talents, the Mythic Plus affix, and the sockets you put into the talents. That's it. That's so much easier than balancing all these other systems and all this other bullshit that's currently in the game. Anyway, though, guys, those are my thoughts. Those are the main things I would change about World of Warcraft. And you know what? The funny thing about it is all of this is so simple. It's so much easier than the, you know, arm around your elbow to reach your ass approach that Blizzard's had over the last few expansions, adding systems that are broken and suck, such as Azerite armor, the Legion artifacts, tons of legendaries linked to RNG, and then having to add new systems to balance the mistakes of the previous system, and it just repeats. And that's why the patches are so late. That's why we're 7.5 months into, you know, before we get 9.1, and that's why there's so much content lulls, because Blizzard can't balance for shit, because there's too much. There's too many possible combinations, and it's an absolute hair-pulling fucking nightmare for them, I'm sure. But the thing is, I don't have any sympathy. They dug this own hole, and they jumped headfirst into it, despite all of the players, you know, majority of players saying, hey, this is a bad idea, this is a bad system, this isn't going to work. Same thing happened with Covenant, same thing happened with Azerite armor. People brought up the same concerns. Even I did way back in the day in Legion about artifact weapons, and it all proved to be true. So maybe, hopefully, Activision, you know, fuck-face Blizzard will, and I'm just getting heated here, because I'm passionate about MMORPGs, but will drop their pride and just listen, keep it simple. And simple can be fun, right? Overly complex systems that just break everything and break balance in PvE and PvP doesn't make your game complex, it makes it stupid. Burning Crusade's gear and the raiding and WoW, vanilla WoW's burning, you know, and I'm not talking about like raid mechanics, I'm just talking about gearing and just the systems in general weren't overly complex, and they were fine. They were a lot of fun and gave you something to do every time you logged in. Oh, and one other thing, just spirit came in my mind, I wish Attunements would come back for raids. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Say them down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, really helps me out if you give me a thumbs up and share it around. If you didn't, that's fine. Give it a thumbs down. You can go fuck yourself. I don't care. But anyway, guys, this has been Raziel. My new stream schedule is now live. You can check the About section and my community section here on YouTube to find the times. To come hang out with me and shoot the shit. You know, tell me what you think of my ideas, and if you have better ideas or different ideas, I'd love to hear those too. Anyway, guys, take care, and as always, keep it real. Oh, and Blizzard.
I just did 80% of your job.